Looking to get quality insurance at a price you can afford? Now you can, thanks to CFM Insurance. CFM specializes in a broad range of farm, home, and rental property coverage. Find an agent right in your local area, as CFM is represented by over 150 independent agents throughout Missouri. For friendly, personal, dependable service from a well-respected leader in the insurance industry, visit cfmutual.com/agents and find an agent near you today.
This week in Missouri politics. I want to jump right into the show this week because we're joined by the big winner from last month's primaries, Saundra McDowell, the Republican nominee for auditor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So people that watch this show like politics, are savvy about politics. I think they want to know you didn't spend the most money. You didn't come from some legacy family. How'd you win?
I think there's a lot of reasons that I won, but you know, I think one of the main reasons is that I worked very hard. I did go to every event that I could possibly go to. I talked to everybody I could talk to. I stayed as late as I could, and you know, was speaking to people as I was leaving the event. And it didn't matter how far away the events were. That was what I was there for. So I spent the time, talked to the people. I also think that my resume is a reason why I won. I mean, people that didn't meet any of the candidates would research all of us, they said, and they thought that I was the most qualified, so they voted for me. And then I think the other reason is because I was the only female on the ballot.
I was going to ask you about that. You know, when you look at the differences in your three primary opponents, you were the only woman running. You know, it's always kind of been a rule of thumb in Missouri politics. If you're on the Democrat side, being a woman is a great advantage. If you're on the Republican side, it's a negligible, maybe a disadvantage. It looks to me like maybe even the era of Trump, Republicans need women on the ticket.
Mm-hmm. And I agree, and it's something I campaigned on as well, because I think we have to look at who we're going to be going against in the general, and in this case, the incumbent is Nicole Galloway, the current auditor, and she has a lot of problems in that office, and so it's going to sound a lot better for a female to be talking about those problems than a male for just obvious reasons.
Let's go into your background. Tell me about your family, first of all.
Well, I'm married to my husband, Jonathan McDowell. We've been married. We met in law school and got married during law school. And when we graduated, we came back to Missouri and started our family here. And we had our first set of twins in Kansas City. And then we thought, well, you know, we've had two babies here right out of the gate. We ended up moving down to Springfield, where his family is located, and had our second set of twins there a year later. And then a couple years later, we had baby Jack. So we have 5 children. Our first set just went into kindergarten. So some big changes in the McDowell household this year.
Well, so you're a veteran attorney, and you've worked in the state government previously, correct?
Correct, yes. I prosecuted fraud with the Attorney General's office. I did Medicaid fraud, so I led auditors and investigators looking into Medicaid providers who overbilled the system. We would audit them, investigate them. If there were errors, we helped them fix them. If they needed to pay back money, we had them do that. And if it was fraudulent, then we prosecuted them. And then when Secretary Ashcroft came into office, he offered me the job of Director of Enforcement for the Securities Division.
He's a good man, isn't he?
He is a good man, and he is doing a great job as Secretary of State. He really cares about the elections process, about doing a good job for Missouri, and so it was great to work there.
There's an aura of integrity sometimes that when you're talking to him, just goodness that comes out of him.
Well, and he comes from a great family as well. I've known his parents for a little bit off and on. I went to Regent University, and so John Ashcroft was an adjunct professor there, and so he has a good family, very good reputation. Obviously cares about the state a lot. So
you win this primary. I think surprising to some, maybe not you. You come right out of the gate with getting a tax. The residency laws on how you can run in the state of Missouri are wildly complex. Yours have been questioned maybe more than anybody since Kit Bond. He seemed to do okay. Even the folks that watch our show that love politics, this is a complex thing. Give me just the short Cliff Notes version on why this issue is being put to bed, or you don't think it's valid.
We've had a lot of auditors that have issues with that residency requirement. Kit Bond was the first one 50 plus years ago, and what the
you're going to make him feel old now.
Well, he was a wonderful auditor, and he's done so much for our state, and so I'm very thankful for that decision.
That was a good first elected job for him. I think it worked out.
It definitely did, and if they would have ruled against him in that case, we'd never have Kit Bond of what, what we have today, and what everything he's done for Missouri. And in that case, they held that the intent is what was relevant, the intent to reside in Missouri. So at what point you intended to become a resident of Missouri or come back to Missouri is what trumped. But even since that time, we had another auditor, Antonio, who also had those issues. I believe he was only a resident of our state for 6 years, and so they went to the federal court with that, and they held that the residency requirement was unconstitutional. And so since that time, there hasn't been another issue until mine, and so I had every intention of going into
court. But you're on the ballot now, and that's kind of over.
It's a non-issue because no one sued on it, and so to me, I believe that they didn't sue because they knew they would lose.
Let me ask you this: there's been people that have attacked you about your personal finances. It's been an interesting thing to me that some folks attacking you at work at places that have had far more severe issues. I'm not sure the standard has been applied to going back and researching credit reports for other members of the legislature than it has you. Give me the rebuttal you'd have. I mean, you've heard all the attacks. They've come at you fast and furious. What is your rebuttal and pushback on that?
Well, first of all, what they're trying to say I have financial issues on has absolutely nothing to do with my finances. It was a contract, a real estate contract that we entered into on a house. And long story short, we included the furniture in the contract. We found out while we lived there that someone else had title to the furniture, so we tried to renegotiate the contract. They wouldn't do it. We moved out. They sued us for that amount that we owed on the furniture and the lease amount. And so it's not even about finances. It's about losing a contract.
Do you think that's a story that's not super foreign to a lot of Missourians?
Oh, I have heard that, actually. I didn't know. And in fact, that scared me to death to even go into another real estate contract. I haven't bought a house or tried to buy a house since because I thought, well, we were defrauded there. And so I've told people about it, and they said, oh, I've got somebody that's had the same kind of issue in a real estate deal like that. I had no idea.
So let me ask you this. Your campaign and other Republicans on your behalf have talked about Nicole Galloway. I think most folks have a regard for the current state auditor, but there has been some questions about some transparency issues. There's a lawsuit stemming from a Republican group in Kansas City. Why does that matter? Or is it just another attack like some of the ones thrown at you?
Well, I think it's all political. I mean, she's trying to attack me on things that happened years ago. I've been prosecuting fraud with the state. I have a great track record of bringing back over $10 million of individual investor funds and taxpayer funds to the state with all that in my past, so it has absolutely no effect on my ability to do my job. In fact, it may make me better at the job because I know about all that fraud out there, and I've actually been defrauded, so I know how it feels to be a victim of fraud. But Nicole Galloway has issues currently, while she's in office. She's been sued twice for transparency issues. Is that what we want our auditor to be? That someone that ignores sunshine law requests, that she doesn't give over the information when she's asked, but then has to have a judge tell her to give the information over. Deleting text messages. Everyone knows that works for the state. If you have text messages, work-related emails or anything, you have to give that over when it's requested.
There's been a problem with that in the previous governor's administration. Could you look someone in the Parson administration in the face and pursue them if they are deleting government records?
Of course, and you should. In fact, the auditor's position should be very nonpartisan and non-political. I will be auditing everyone consistently and effectively, regardless whether they are Republican or Democrat, and they all should be audited. It's not just it's not to go after them or try to accuse them of things, but the auditor's office should act as a shield. The AG's office is the sword, where they go in and they prosecute and they do what's necessary. The auditor's office is there to help people, and that's what they should be doing. That is not currently happening in Galloway's administration from everyone I've talked to across the state. She's working against them. I want to work with them to protect them. And so when you ask for these documents, say I'm asking for a receipt. If it just says $50, well, I could take that and fine, but that's not protecting you. The current auditor's administration, the office itself, the auditors are not properly trained. They don't know why they're asking for the documentation they're asking for. They can't answer basic questions when asked by the people they're auditing.
It's going to be a fun campaign.
She has so many issues that I really want to stick to the issues because I can talk about that for the remainder of the campaign, and that's what I have to go in and fix when I get in office in January.
Unfortunately, we're out of time to talk about it here, but Saundra McDowell, the Republican nominee for state auditor, thank you for coming here and sharing your views.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll be right back. State Representative David Gregory joins our Opinion Maker panel after this.
In my state of Oklahoma, since it's become a right-to-work state, we've lost tens of thousands of jobs, and wages have gone down. I lost my job of 36 years.
Census Bureau and U.S. Department of Labor reports show that in right-to-work states, families make over $8,700 less per year, but CEOs make 361 times the average worker.
Prop A in Missouri is not what they're trying to sell you.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Looking to get quality insurance at a price you can afford? Now you can, thanks to CFM Insurance. Select from our broad range of farm, home, and rental property coverage. Find an agent right in your local area, as CFM is represented by a network of 200 independent agencies throughout Missouri. For personal and dependable service from a company with a history of insuring the families of Missouri that dates back to 1869, visit WeInsureMissouri.com and find an agent near you today.
At Ameren, Missouri, we know what light can do. It draws people together and chases monsters away. And if you shine it in the right direction, it will light the path for the next generation, showing them what their tomorrow could look like, and spotlighting the possibilities that lay in front of them. Investing in our community by lighting the way forward. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. We're going to talk politics now. Jeff Rorta, top cop running for Jefferson County Executive.
Yes, sir. Glad to be back.
So, Ann Schweitzer, it's been too long.
Yes, it has.
Public Eye STL in St. Louis City, right? Mm-hmm. Tell Mr. Cowell we said hi. David Gregory, State Representative from South County. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And the White Knight of the Missouri Republican Party, Mike Havner. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Representative, let's talk about special session. Starts tomorrow. Leads right into veto session. The two bills don't seem to be too controversial.
No, as a matter of fact, both bills passed, but they were vetoed for different purposes. So we've got the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math bill that basically is promoting computer science, right? Computer science is the next thing. We really want to get our kids with those skill sets because that's what's coming up for the career. So we're going to be passing the STEM bill. That's a little more focused, and then same thing with court treatment. So we're going to be expanding the court treatment throughout Missouri. Right now, it works very well in St. Louis. Treatments for special treatment courts for DWIs and drug use, things like that, veterans. So we're going to be helping people stay out of jail. We're going to give them the treatment they need to curb recidivism and stay out of jail.
And it was an interesting scene this week. You saw at a person who's been on the show many times, Jeff Mazur. He's doing some really good work at Launch Code. You saw the governor, the speaker, the two leaders of the Senate were there right in North City, St. Louis, talking about how this bill will actually help places like Launch Code. It is an interesting, kind of a new breath of fresh air that you're seeing people. I didn't see a lot of Republicans. I can't think back in my mind a lot of backdrops like that I've seen in the past.
Yeah, STEM education is a really bipartisan issue right now. I mean, we have to remember that Vice President Biden spoke at Launch Code as well. So this is something that's bringing people together. And I think that's, if I was going to give Parsons a grade, at least on a curve, I'd say he's doing a very good job bringing Democrats and Republicans together, especially around drug treatment courts, STEM, very important issues in our state right now.
Jeff Rorta, when I think of law and order, I think of Jeff Rorta. But drug treatment things are things that, if you're a conservative, these things actually work, and it's cheaper, and it actually produces a better result many times.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, let's just forget about the two issues he's calling people back about. The conversation should be more about the fact that we have a statesman who understands the legislative process in the governor's mansion. That's the real contrast. I mean, remember, the real reason that Mike is calling the legislature back in is to move his appointments along. He couldn't have done that in a veto session. In a special session, he can. It just shows what an able governor with a small g he is, and how he understands the process, and he's bringing back the legislature to talk about two non-controversial issues, in the meantime moving his appointments ahead. I mean, I think it shows that he's stepping right over this very low bar that was set by Eric Greitens.
Low bar, but there's an interesting point when you say statesman. Jay Nixon's somebody that did know those things, that did work in those manners. Maybe nobody missed it till it was gone. Has anybody's stock rose faster in a shorter period of time than Governor Nixon's?
Well, I mean, here, I think Democrats, a lot of them took glee in kicking sand in Jay's face. You know, I was always a defender of Governor Nixon, but, you know, they've all got to figure out their value in the post-Nixon era, and, you know, it was quite a learning experience for a lot of senators.
Mike Everett, it's an interesting thing, you know, conservatives, law and order, but also you want to spend the money well. This is a way that maybe you're splitting the baby, you're spending a little extra money, and maybe you're not throwing everybody in the underneath the jail that commits a crime, but you may be having a really good outcome by moderating some of those extreme positions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's next week will be a home run for Governor Parson and the legislature on these issues. The top priorities that he set was workforce development, infrastructure, and really just making a positive impact on people's lives. These are two really important ways that you can do that. Drug treatment courts are about empowering people, giving people a second chance that they normally wouldn't have had, and really revolutionizing the criminal justice system in a way that.
Let's be fair here. You put your political consultant hat on. Very low bar, as Jeff said. I think that's fair. Comes out, I think by all accounts, he even answers, he stepped over that bar and cleared it well. I think he set up David. I don't see these being contentious things. I don't see a bunch of vetoes thrown up. I think people are going to have to look for conflict. So he probably has another good week. Where does that big Parson plane come back to reality a little bit? Where do you see a potential landmine in the next few weeks?
I'm not sure in the next few weeks. Look, I mean, next week you're seeing a governor and an administration that has a very collaborative approach to governing. We haven't had that in 18 months, and you're seeing how this plays out, and the relationships that Parson and the governor and his administration has with the legislature is really positive. And honestly, we never had that with Governor Nixon either. So we're looking at almost 10 years that you haven't had these kind of relationships and this collaborative approach to governing right now. When does it end, or when does it come back to reality? We'll see what happens in January when the herd is back in Jefferson City and personalities take over in some of the caucuses.
Give me a prediction here. I think one of the most interesting undercurrents of the special session will be Bob Onder. He's running for pro tem. He's got 3 opponents, maybe 4. He's actually, because Mike Kehoe will be down in the chair as the lieutenant governor, he'll be running the floor. Do they look for a reason to have conflict to give him a hard time, or is this a good week for him?
I think it's a good week.
What do you think?
I think it's going to be a good week.
What do you think?
Well, when you have a super majority like that, it's hard not to have a good week. But I'm happy to see that we're focusing we're taking a little bit of the focus from being really contentious, and we have a lot of issues to talk about and a lot of fights to have. But it's nice to have a few days at least where we can agree on some things.
I remember one time there was a veto session where there was an override, and maybe your light went from green to red. Do you think some senator who might want to give Senator Onder a problem in his leadership race may make it a little harder on the floor this week?
I call it the old hidden ball trick, Scott. Governor Nixon reveled in telling that story at a fundraiser he headlined for me recently. Hey, listen, Republicans are going to have a really bad fall, and Bob Onder is sort of the poster boy for why they're going to have a bad fall. I should say bad autumn, but maybe a bad fall, too. Listen, this is going to be a tough election cycle between the damage that Donald Trump has done to the Republican brand and the damage that Eric Greitens has done to the Republican brand, and the far right of the Republican Party, which Bob Onder sort of embodies, is going to have to explain why they drugged the party so far and why they turned populist voters that they had after the Trump election against them by pushing silly issues like right to work.
Let's talk about Clean Missouri. It seems to be the most talked about ballot measure. It would change a lot of things about Missouri's election law. Right. I think some of the stuff is pretty popular and are not that big a deal. Lobbyists give a few of those other things. But couched in that is a way to change the way that Missouri draws its maps. Why is that a good idea?
We need to have districts that make sense. And if we have districts that are gerrymandered, that are drawn all over the place so that people who are in power there get to stay in power, it's not fair for the electorate. And I understand that people want to keep their fiefdoms, but People also deserve to have their vote matter, and we're not looking at making it even Republican, Democrat. We're just looking at trying to make districts that make sense and are contiguous in a way that is reasonable. There's a lot of really good things in the bill, and I think like right to work, we'll have a situation in which big businesses, maybe some very loud people will say this isn't good for Missouri, but I think the majority of Missourians will say these are things we need, and we don't care what big business says about it.
All right, tell me why this is. I've not met one Republican that likes this, except Rob Schaaf. Why is Jim Limpy? Why is this a bad idea?
Well, I'll tell you what, look, there's really no way around it. Clean Missouri is nothing but a gerrymandering scheme to help benefit the liberal agenda. We already have a fair system. We already have it. We have a bipartisan system of commissioners that are set up, and 70% of these commissioners have to approve the districting, the redistricting. They have to prove it. That's fair. That's very fair. No one's getting cheated. No one's getting hurt. All this is a way for the liberal agenda to achieve a more favorable redistricting for themselves.
Mike Abner, I know you're a Republican strategist, but a fair guy. Democrats in this state are very densely populated in two pockets, excuse me, right on the state lines. It's a geographical advantage for Republicans, no matter who draws the lines, right?
Well, look, I agree with Representative Gregory. Clean Missouri is a wolf in sheep's clothing. There are some good elements to it. Ending lobbyist gifts or limiting lobbyist gifts at $5, of course. Who can't agree with that? And lobbyists work within the parameters that they're given.
They're all going to vote for this. The lobbyists, they would love that, right? Getting rid of lobbyists.
Well, look, they work within the parameters that they're given, and if it's a $5 gift, they'll still be around. The other element to this, though, is the wolf in sheep's clothing. It's the redistricting part of it. And, the best thing Eric Greitens did over the last 8 months through his own self-interest was convincing people, one, that George Soros was his personal mortal enemy and was responsible for his downfall by funding Kim Gardner's race. And again, through his own self-interest, that millions of dollars of dark money coming into a system is bad for the state. Clean Missouri is funded in part by dark money and by liberal special interests on the coast. And when we make that argument to voters, I think they're going to respond to it.
Do you think Jeff County responds to that argument?
No. Kudos to Mike and Dave for keeping a straight face while I try to describe this as a Trojan horse. I mean, we're in a state where...
It's a big bill.
Yeah, it is a big bill, but you still have to give voters credit for paying attention. I mean, ultimately they get the government that they want and deserve.
All right, Jeff Rhoda, what if I told you that I think this is very well done? I mean, true professionals. Sean Nicholson is a very smart guy. Is it maybe a way to Democrats have a hard time winning under the current rules, so they change the rules?
Well, except that the rules are desirous of change. I mean, listen, we have a state where statewide elections are almost always competitive unless there's some big wave, and yet we've got 2/3 of the legislature in the hands of one party because of gerrymandering and because of very loose rules about campaign fundraising.
There's been big waves, but let me ask you this: bottom line, does this pass? Give me a prediction.
Overwhelmingly.
Does it pass?
I think yes. I also want to say that with dark money coming in, we were talking about this a little bit before. It's only dark if you don't agree with the bill, because if you are oh yeah, because
I think there are some people that truly are objective about it.
Maybe that's true, but I think when politicians and the people like us talk about it, we're talking about I don't like this bill, therefore it's dark money. If you like the bill, it's just a really concerned citizen who's putting his money where his mouth is.
Does it pass?
I don't know.
Just give me a good prediction.
Yeah.
I say it passes. What do you think?
No.
No, I think they're wrong, and I think they know it.
No straight face that time.
Let's talk about this state auditor's race. Ann Schweitzer, Nicole Galloway is somebody that I think is pretty well respected.
Right.
We've had Saundra McDowell on earlier in the show. If you're Nicole Galloway, how do you break out? If McCaskill loses by 2 or 3 points, can she still win?
I think so. Nicole is popular across the state. People respect her. She's incredibly reasonable. She's good at her job. If this were a straight job application, she would get it overwhelmingly. This is something that she deserves. She's done the work, and she's a rising star in the Democratic Party.
Jeff Ford, I've watched you run some races very qualified for. Big partisan moves are hard to swim against. If you're giving Nicole Galloway some advice, let's say Josh Hawley wins by 4 points, hypothetically. What advice could you give her to still win?
Keep doing what you're doing. Nicole's got her shoulder to the grindstone, and I don't expect Josh Hawley to win. I expect Claire McCaskill to win, but
Claire McCaskill wins. She probably very likely
yeah,
wins
she
as
wins.
well.
If Claire wins, then Nicole wins easily. But listen, Saundra McDowell is a terribly flawed candidate. Nicole's going to make hay over that. The newspapers, the Kansas City and St. Louis newspapers both did editorials this week about how flawed McDowell is as a candidate, and that's just going to keep on coming.
Is it a little odd that a newspaper that just went bankrupt, like the Post, is criticizing somebody else's finances?
A little bit. Look, you know, Saundra's a first-time candidate, but let's be honest, Nicole Galloway's a first-time candidate too. She was not elected to that position, appointed by Governor Nixon, and there's going to be a testing ground for her too. Now, with that said, Saundra McDowell has to be out there getting her message out because she's at a severe money disadvantage right now, and she's had a few missteps. But you cannot count her out. She beat three other candidates in the primary, one of which that was very well funded, and you can't count her out. It's going to be a sprint to the finish line. There's 58 days left.
David Gregory, if Josh Hawley wins by 3 points, she wins. How much does he have to win by for her to win?
Oh, I don't know, but I would never count Saundra McDowell. I mean, she got around the entire state with a lot less money than else. She's a veteran. Yeah. She's got a great resume, so I'm super excited about Saundra.
I can't let you go without asking. In the news, really all over the state, there was a list of cops that were excluded. I'm not sure I even understand it all. I'm usually on the other end of the cops than that end. What is this, and what's going to happen? Or are there going to be cops in the city excluded from being able to investigate cases?
Well, we're gonna to litigate this. We're looking at every angle. We're in the media every day. We're approaching this as a political problem, and we've certainly already we're 1 for 1 in legal victories. The judge ruled on Wednesday. He issued a temporary restraining order regarding the list and its use and release. So I mean, this is going to create a chilling effect on crime fighting in St. Louis and really in the entire state. You know, Mike Parson needs to remember, and he did a great job standing up for cops this week when this list came out, but Mike needs to remember that crime and violent crime is a Missouri problem, not just a St. Louis or Kansas City problem. Missouri is second in the country in murders per capita, and that's a state problem, and we're not treating it like a state problem. We ought to. And
Schweitzer, when I said this, I said some of this stuff are things that Kim Gardner talked about in the campaign that she won overwhelmingly.
Right. Well, I think it would be unrealistic to say that every prosecutor across the country doesn't have, some cops that they exclude their testimony. They do. They may not make a list, they may not make it public, they may not even tell the cops about it, but there are cops working in the system who aren't going to be trusted by the prosecutor. And to say otherwise, and to say otherwise is just, and I understand having a list and having it made public and all of the, as Mayor Cruzen said, drama around it is something that is going to be talked about for a long time to come and litigated. But not all cops are good, not all cops are bad, and the prosecutor knows that.
Mike Abner, who speaking of people that are good, with a minute left, who won the week?
Governor Parson, I think next week is going to be a home run with his announcement on special session. He is going to be leading a charge that's really going to make a positive impact in people's lives and Missourians' lives.
David Gregory, who won the week?
Governor Parson was a good one. I'll go with Josh Hawley. I think Missouri needs a U.S. Senator that knows our way of life and respects it, and he's getting his message out. He's doing a great job.
Behind him.
He is.
Who won the week?
No doubt it was Nicole Galloway. I mean, I think she probably secretly took a Republican ballot and voted for Saundra McDowell. She got the opponent that she wanted.
Who won the week? Jane Duger said that about Donald Trump, too, one time. Who won the week?
Allie Dreeth for going to D.C. and representing us incredibly well at the Kavanaugh hearings.
I'm going to say, speaking of hearings, Billy Long, congressman from Springfield, he broke out. He's an auctioneer by trade. He broke out during a protest. We hope you will join us next week to keep talking politics on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by CFM Insurance, the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.